On last week's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we highlighted 4 year 2 players with league winning upside, and 2 of those guys were incredibly expensive. So that had us thinking, we shouldn't just give out luxury buys, right? Not everyone's trying to drop a band on specific players. We should give out some suggestions to some of our favorite listeners of the podcast. Talking about our bargain bin shoppers, our listeners who might frequent Marshalls or Nordstrom Rack, or they're scoping out deals in the clearance section. We've all been there. Mad respect to people that can get a good deal. So on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have 3 league-winning bargain bin veterans to target in Dynasty fantasy football. I'm your host, Shaun, and I'm joined by my good friends, my co-hosts, and my fellow knowers of ball, Keegan Thompson and Aidan Haller. Aidan, Caleb Williams has a pink phone case, and the internet seems pretty upset about that. How does that make you feel about your potential franchise quarterback?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. When he's hanging 4 tutties on a weekly basis, just doesn't matter. He can I'll wear a tutu on my couch if that helps Caleb Williams play better. I do not care. I think the guys in the locker room, they're not going to care. It's all about what can you do on the field? What kind of person are you? So, no, the reviews from his teammates too over the last couple of weeks have kind of debunked the whole character thing. I'm feeling better and better as we are now within a month of pretty much changing my life for the better. So yeah, no, I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, he is going to be a really good player. We haven't dove too much into the draft content that is coming next week, but Caleb Williams, surprise, really good player. I'm very excited to see him for the Bears next season. Keegan, people are taking the New York Jets as Super Bowl long shot bets. Adam Levitan said that on the Establish the Run podcast, and I was, wow, he's one of the sharpest guys in the industry. How are we doing? What are the levels of back are we right now, Keegan? Is it a scale of like 1 to 10? How back are we?
Let's just get through like 4 games.
Okay. So we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Okay, we're not there yet.
I would love to see him play longer than I would love to see Aaron Rodgers earn a first down in a regular season game before I start thinking about the Super Bowl. Pick 10 might be fully on the menu for Brock Bowers, maybe Rome Odunze. Maybe we trade up and go get Marvin Harrison Jr. Who knows what the Jets will do? But yeah, let's pump the brakes on the Super Bowl stuff and let's just wait and see what happens here.
Something I don't want to pump the brakes on, the mustache is gone. For our listeners, this might be a devastating moment for the Keegan Thompson hive, because I know you're out there, Team Keegan. What led to the mustache? Why is it gone?
Sometimes you just need a change of pace. It was getting long. I've had it for a long time. I wanted to switch up my look, but your facial hair is the only way that guys can change the way you look. You can get a haircut, but I can alter my personality by shaving my mustache dramatically. So I just want to take a little break, give my upper lip a breather, expose it to some sun. I haven't seen it in a while. So maybe stop getting people who don't have a mustache don't know this, but every time I take a sip out of a can, I thought I had one here, but I would get caught on the tab.
Oh no.
I was getting stuff in your mustache. Sometimes it just gets in the way. So I just needed to clean it up.
Nice.
I feel bad. That guy that called me old time hockey is going to be like, what the fuck, dude? You don't look like that anymore.
Yeah, you went from a Western vibe to California fuckboy vibe in a quick second.
All right, I don't like that.
This is like a light work beard for Keegan, and I'm over here having shaved in a couple weeks, and it looks like someone took Elmer's glue and pubic hairs and put it on my face. So enjoy your beard, sir. I can't believe I just said Elmer's glue and pubic hairs on the podcast. We're gonna.
That was crazy.
We should keep.
That was good. That was good.
Okay. The format for today's episode is pretty simple. We are looking for veterans that you will find on the 3rd and 4th pages. None of that 1 or 2 pages on Keep Trade Cut. You're going multiple pages. Guys sitting in the 130 to 150, 160 range, guys that would only take a mid to late 2nd, early 3rd to go acquire, right? And guys that we think could help bolster your roster to make a run to the championship in 2024. I will preface this. A lot of the guys that we're going to mention are in a bit of a precarious position with the NFL draft. A high quality rookie with a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round pick definitely could disrupt some of the intermediate term impact and view of their potential performance, but we're going to roll with it, understanding that these guys are in great spots and they're also uber talented. We really like the talent of all 3 of these guys. So we're going to kick things off here with a running back. Yes, we're going to tell you to go acquire a running back. Keegan has got a running back for us that year over year, this guy destroys me. I mean, the guy literally destroys me. I cannot, both of these guys on this call right now, I mean, in this video, have absolutely destroyed me with this player in the fantasy playoffs. So I've completely capitulated. I am now completely accepting that this guy's just a stone cold baller. And Keegan, tell us why you are trading for James Conner Dynasty in the year 2024.
Man, I was inspired by, there's a lot of James Conner, like, I don't know if people are waking up to James Conner, but I don't know. The Twitter conversation on James Conner is real fun right now because everybody's like, oh my God, this guy still has some juice. And I'm here to report he definitely does. Like, among 58 qualified running backs last year, here's where James Conner ranked in some key stuff. 2nd in yards after contact, 4th in elusiveness rating, 5th in explosive run percentage, 5th in PFF rush grade, and 6th in missed tackles forced per touch. I mean, the guy is definitely still has some juice. He's coming off his best yards per carry and yards per game season at age 28. And the case for buying James Conner is he's so cheap for like a contributing member of your dynasty team, especially for somebody like me who's 0 RB bro or hero RB build. Like, even in a startup, I would be targeting James Conner. I mean, he's around like 117 or 107, currently on sleeper startup. And his value on Keep Trade Cut, he's like the 147th ranked player. Like, that's grouped next to people like Jahan Dotson, Kendre Miller, a 2024 late second, Marvin Mims, and like Trey Benson. You know, the idea of Trey Benson. Kendre Miller, like I said, is kind of in there too. So I just feel like he's so cheap and it's such a good buy. Just those stats I mentioned. And there's a whole list of stats for James Conner. But it's funny you mentioned the playoffs, Shaun. In weeks 15 through 17 last year in 2023, he was 4th in total PPR points. He was 4th in fantasy points per game. And if you go back to 2022 in that same stretch, he was 6th in total PPR points and 7th in points per game. And there was only 7 players last year that averaged more points per game than James Conner. And like, when you think of buying running backs at 28, you're like, why would I do that? You know, there are some older backs though that were top 15 in points per game last year. You know, Alvin Kamara was 3rd, Raheem Mostert 4th, Joe Mixon 11th, and James Conner 13th. And the price to acquire a good contributing running back is so steep. Yeah, Bijan, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kieran Williams, A-Chain, Jonathan Taylor, that like elite crop of young guys. It's going to be impossible to pry those off somebody's roster, and it's going to cost you a fortune. And then there's this weird grouping of backs like Etienne, Saquon, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, who are still young, but they kind of float into no man lands of rankings. I feel like James Conner is contributing at the level of all of these players for significantly less draft capital if you're in a startup or if you're already in a league and you want to trade for him. So I think trading for James Conner, even if you part ways with a 2024 second, like, who is that? Is it going to be, you know, Bucky Irving? Is it going to be Marshawn Lloyd? It could be Trey Benson. You know, they're all just like, it's the mystery box thing we always talk about. Like, you don't know that any of them will ever be as like productive as James Conner will. And I think with, what's his name? The why can't I think of the
John Gannon? Jonathan Gannon. Yeah.
I think he showed a willingness to just commit to one back. Like, there was some Mary DeMarcado stuff, but James Conner played 13 games and there was some injury concern there, but
they fed
him. And since 2022, it's not like an outlier. Since 2020, he's finished every season with 200 plus opportunities and 7 plus touchdowns. He's got 3 straight seasons with 15 plus points per game. I mean, he was RB 13 in like last year in the points per game world. So it's, to me, a cheap running back buy who's going to contribute. And the murkiness around him is like, well, what if they draft a running back? Who cares? This is like the down year of running back drafts. You know, like, it's all about the wide receivers. It's about the quarterbacks. And it's about the tackles this year. The running backs this year are such a big mystery box that even if they did draft somebody, I feel like James Conner still has plenty of juice. And he doesn't have the same, like, he has more tread on his tires than someone like Derrick Henry does, like, who's a little bit older in age. He's never been a 300 carry guy. Even Joe Mixon's done that twice. So he still has
always hurt. It's the injuries with James Conner. The production has always been elite. They've brought in other running backs, like Chase Edmonds was supposed to eat, you know, James Conner's lunch. That didn't happen. I mean, since he's been a Cardinal, the guy's been lights out when he's been on the field. Like, it's always been an injury thing with Conner. And it's something where, like, a rookie running back comes in and you're worried, like, are the Cardinals good? Right. So if the Cardinals are good, who cares if they bring in a rookie running back, right? Because they'll be scoring points. But if the Cardinals suck, you really don't want him to split carries. You want him to eat those yards, eat those goal line looks. Aidan, I guess I'm curious, like, what kind of rookie running back would have to come in and just take James Conner's role, or like really make you worried to buy him for a late second in Dynasty?
Yeah, with this running back class in general, I'm not all that concerned about James Conner's role. There's really no alphas in this class. There's no 3-down running backs really in this class. You can maybe make an argument for one or two towards the top of it, but James Conner, like kind of Keegan said, is just ultra productive, man. Hasn't finished outside of running back 19 in his 3 years in Arizona. At least 8 touchdowns every single year. Sure, he misses 2-3 games. It's kind of what you sign up for, but the guy's good, man. He's like,
Good.
Carries the ball good. He catches balls too. Like he's kind of sneaky in the receiving game. He's got 37, 46, and 27 catches during his 3 years in Arizona. So you pretty much pencil him in for, 30, 35, even 40 catches if he, somehow plays 17 games. This is a guy that I like. He's on my redraft teams quite a bit. Don't have any shares of him in Dynasty at the moment. Would love to get a piece of him, but no, James Conner
He's so
is
cheap. It's
ultra
so cheap
cheap
to acquire. Like, I think even parting with a late second, if you want to do it this year, like, what do you care about a late 2024 second if you're competing for a championship? If you're knocking on the door of, winning your dynasty league, you need some RB depth. Why wouldn't you just get rid of that? Because who's that going to be anyways? Like I said, there's a list of running backs.
Yeah.
But it's like, you don't know that they're actually going to contribute. Like, I know James Conner's going to have a role. I know their offense is going to be better with a healthy Kyler. They were great towards the end of the year, at least as an offensive environment. They're going to get a stud wide receiver in this draft. Like, their offense should get a much needed boost this year.
Yeah, I'm in on James Conner. I think we talked about him early in January as someone worth buying. I think I'm in on this entire Cardinals offense. I think it's going to be much improved next season. They have 6 picks in the top 100 of this draft. I think they're going to have some major improvements and reinforcements coming to this team and to this roster. And we're all bullish on Kyler Murray. So I think we're in on this Cardinals offense. I love James Conner as a buy. You're not giving up much, and I think he's getting paid like $14 million next year. Like, his contract is pretty hefty, I think. And then he
got a roster bonus that just clicked on like St. Patty's Day as well too. Like, they're committed to him to be there. It's like they're gonna lean on him again.
I think they will draft the running back. It'd be kind of dumb not to, considering Amari Demercado and like Keontae Ingram are the backups on this team. So
very good.
I definitely think they should draft somebody. I'm still pretty bullish on James Conner. But before we dive into our second bargain bin veteran to acquire, 2 things. First, if you are part of the 70% of people that are watching this episode but aren't yet subscribed to the Regression to the Mean podcast, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and go ahead and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the content that we are dropping weekly. And it'll probably be twice a week in April with the NFL draft coming.
Yeah, we're going to bump those numbers up.
2, if you have traded for James Conner or for any of the players that we talk about in this episode, please drop those trades in the comments below. We love interacting with you guys. We love working through trade ideas with you guys. It's awesome interacting. Please keep the comments coming. It means the world to us. We really appreciate it. All right, Aidan, second veteran. This is somebody that just had a big boost in their value because of where they landed in free agency. Tell us why you are trading for or targeting DJ Moore's former best friend. Weren't they like best friends on the Carolina Panthers?
Bestie. Yeah. I was honestly really hoping for this guy to land in Chicago. I think like the need was pretty apparent. I'm stoked they got Keenan Allen, but Curtis Samuel is a guy that I think has been, underrated for quite some time. Has never been elite by any means in terms of his fantasy production. Like some of his finishes over the last couple of years, 42, 34, 25, 36, 49. So he's a wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on the given year. 28 years old going into his 8th season. So, still really not that old. There's a ton of juice still left in there. Signed a 3-year deal this offseason with Buffalo. Committed to him for $24 million. So honestly, less than I thought he was going to get. Pretty cheap. One of the things that makes me most excited about Curtis Samuel, though, is reuniting him with Joe Brady, his offensive coordinator, who during his best season in Carolina. So Joe Brady in 2020 was Curtis Samuel's offensive coordinator, was good for wide receiver 25 that year. I think that was a big piece or a kind of big factor in him landing here. Was I think there's a very clear vision in terms of what is he going to be in that offense. Just kind of looking at the offensive weapons and the talent. First of all, it's Josh Allen. You're getting tied to, the top fantasy QB, top 3 overall quarterback in the NFL right now. Massive boost from whatever the hell we're going to call quarterback play in Washington last year. It was a disaster, man. It was just all over the place.
Stand up.
It was
fun. It was fun, but it
for
was
sure.
it was all over the place.
But I'm glad it's over. So you've got Stephon Diggs, obviously, your clear X, your clear number one. I've got to assume they go out and get a Gabe Davis replacement in the draft. They don't really have any size at the wide receiver position as it stands right now. Curtis Samuel is 5'11". Khalil Shakir is 6 foot tall. You need some size on the other side. So that kind of leaves the slot position between Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, who are very similar players here. Kind of just looking at some stats from last year. Shakir lined up
similar players.
Yeah, Shakir is a bit more slot dependent. He was there 78% of snaps. Samuel a bit less at 68%. Again, almost identical height and weight. Shakir was better in terms of PFF. They had him at wide receiver 34 on the year with Samuel at 58. Shakir favors in ADOT and yards per route run as well by a slim margin. But again, I think a good amount of that has to do with the quarterback play and who he was tied to. The first 3 targets was almost double for Samuel versus Shakir, which I thought was interesting, as he was definitely more of a focal point in that offense, even with an alpha like Terry McLaurin. So this will be interesting. This is a risk, like we mentioned. None of these guys are guaranteed a massive role post draft. I absolutely think they're going to take a wide receiver, and as of right now, he's probably going to have to beat out Khalil Shakir for that slot wide receiver position, which I think is very possible. He's the more proven commodity in the NFL. Joe Brady support. Bean was raving about him too when they picked him up. So this is a guy that I like. It's probably only going to cost you a 3rd round pick. This is even cheaper here. This is a coupon that you get in the mail. Like, this is just like to your front door. It's, just go redeem it at the counter. So it's a fun one. There's a couple of other ways I could have gone with wide receiver here, but I think Curtis Samuel, just with like the massive boost in quarterback and offensive play, is a fun one to take a look at this season.
Yeah, I think he's got a ton of upside and very little downside risk to go acquire him, right? Like a 3rd round pick is what you're giving up.
Yeah.
I think, best case scenario, he's utilized all over the formation. He's utilized out of the backfield, which he was with Joe Brady previously in Carolina. And when he got the ball last year, he was really good. He was straight up better than Jahan Dotson last year. We talked about this in our waiver episode. Like, hey, Curtis Samuel for the 4th week in a row is better than Jahan Dotson. So I'm a big believer in his talent, but I'm also a big believer in Khalil Shakir's talent. All the underlying metrics on him are fantastic. He's a year 3 wide receiver. Typically, we see some of these 5th round picks be breakouts by year 3. There's like Stephon Diggs discontent, but I don't think Diggs is going anywhere. I think Diggs is going to remain a Buffalo Bill.
No, he's not going anywhere.
And I saw this, Josh Norris had this over at Underdog. Khalil Shakir ran 2 routes last season in 2 wide receiver sets. Curtis Samuel ran 6. And Brandon Bean is also pushing really hard to draft a wide receiver in this draft. So my question posited to Keegan here, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, how is this shaking out for you? Because the Bills for back-to-back seasons have now just split the wide receiver snaps at the slot, and it's just like, what the fuck are we doing? Can we just commit to somebody here? Are you taking Samuel over Shakir, Keegan?
I think it's really hard to pick, but I'm just going to go with the talent profile over here, and I feel like Curtis Samuel is the more talented overall athlete than Khalil Shakir. I'm not saying Khalil Shakir is bad in the specific role he plays, but Curtis Samuel is more versatile. Like, I think Curtis Samuel won't just be in a slot for them. Like, he has the opportunity to line up in a second, like, especially I think they're going to go get somebody who can be in those 2 wide receiver sets. But in the instance they don't, like, Curtis Samuel can kind of play a little bit more all over the field. I think he's just shown me over his years, like, how successful he can win. He's not just, like I said, a slot receiver. Like, he can win on his routes. He can win on the outside. And he's a better athlete. He's like, I won't call him sneaky athlete, but he's a lot faster, I think, in game speed than people realize. And he's such a versatile player with the ball in his hands. So I think I'm just going to go with Curtis Samuel there and bet on the overall talent profile.
Yeah, Samuel, former 2nd round pick out of Ohio State, longtime favorite of reception perception, Matt Harmon. So, like, plenty of positive indications in his profile. With him, similar to James Conner, it's always been injuries with Samuel. He missed his like whole first year with the Commanders, right, due to like hamstring issues. So
Yeah, he
talent
played
is
5
undeniable.
games. It was not great.
I'm a big believer in Shakir because all these like they pull all these like EPA per target or like all these crazy stats, and it's like
the
what
advanced
the fuck
stats
is
on him are
Khalil
super
Shakir
positive.
doing on this list? So like,
They're
but
super
the team,
positive.
the Bills have told us consistently, like last year it was Deontay Hardy before they gave Khalil Shakir a chance. They've gone out and signed Curtis Samuel, who projects as a slot-dependent type player. So, like, maybe Samuel slides over and he plays more as downfield, which is ultra bullish, by the way. If Samuel's being used as an X receiver and a slot
Would be
receiver,
sick. Oh, that'd
severely
be sick.
underpriced if he's not a slot-only player.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, rational coaching gets all three of these guys, Diggs, Shakir, and Samuel, on the field together. But we'll see what they do in the draft and how that shakes out.
Yeah.
Before we move on, again, if you have traded for Curtis Samuel or anyone in your league has traded Curtis Samuel, if you have any hot takes, maybe you went to high school with Curtis Samuel, drop that in the comments below. We want to know your thoughts on Samuel. Okay, so that means we got one more guy to buy. And I just bought him today, fellas. I put my money where the mouth is. And
I love when that happens. That's been happening
the
recently.
second week in a row.
episodes. Yeah, and then we actually go out and make it.
We stand on that shit. We stand on that shit.
I went and go bottom, and for context, I gave up the 206 in Devin Singletary for this player and a second-round pick next year for a team that I don't think is very good. So I think it's going to be a decent second-round pick next year. And the player that I went and acquired was none other than Evan Engram. Okay, so in 2022, Evan Engram posts career highs in almost every single statistical category in his first year in Jacksonville. He gave us hope that Kyle Pitts would eventually break out. We felt great about Evan Engram. We even talked about it on a season recap for 2022, Keegan, where we were both all in on Evan Engram. 2023 rolls around, last offseason. I thought he was a major sell candidate. I wanted nothing to do with him in redraft. Keegan stood on business. Keegan was still in on Evan Engram. We'll let the record be shown here that Keegan has been all in on Evan Engram from the jump. And I was out for a couple of reasons. One, he had like that massive stretch to end 2022 where he had like 330 burgers, which just didn't seem sustainable because he might regress his mean, right? I said it.
Yep.
I said it. And then also they added Calvin Ridley. And I was like, come on, like really? They got Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne. Like, where does Engram profile here as a tight end? Well, that did not go well. That fade did not work. Evan Engram comes out and posts a better year last season than he had in 2022. Evan Engram finished top 3 among all tight ends in these metrics. Receiving yards, that's pretty good. He led the NFL for tight ends in targets. He was in the top 3 in target share. He was in the top 3 in first read target share. He was in the top 3 in fantasy points, and he was in the top 3 in expected fantasy points per game. Pretty good. Pretty good for Evan Engram. And did he benefit from Christian Kirk getting hurt? Absolutely. Like, come on, Christian Kirk got hurt. The middle of the field basically belonged to Evan Engram. But I'm going to have to say this. He has now had back-to-back seasons of having a truly elite role in fantasy football. He's basically a wide receiver at this point. He does not block. They have him run routes away from running plays, right? He is not involved in the run game at all.
whatsoever.
He's just a big slot wide receiver, and it's awesome. He's really, really effective in that role. And I don't really see that changing because they got rid of Calvin Ridley. They wanted to keep him, but he's gone. And they brought in Gabe Davis, and they had Calvin Ridley play that like deep downfield role. Now they have Gabe Davis playing that role, which he should be playing. Like, that's the Gabe Davis role. He's going to be running all those clear out routes. Christian Kirk's going to still get his, and then Evan Ingram's going to have the same role. And this offense sucked last year, and this offense is going to be way better. Just regression indicates that Trevor Lawrence is going to bounce back. Their offensive line is going to be better. The play calling is going to be better. The Jaguars will be better next year. And why would Evan Engram, in this case, a guy who only scored 4 touchdowns, by the way, and was still the tight end 2, which is insane considering tight ends bank on touchdowns, why would Evan Engram in this elite role be the tight end 13 right now and keep trade cut? 128 overall. He's behind David Njoku, who I get it, who had a monster season, very talented. He's behind Jake Ferguson, who I love, but come on. Like, Evan Engram is like a clear number 2 option right now in his offense. Jake Ferguson is, I guess, the number 2. We'll see what happens with the draft. And Michael Mayer. And I like Michael Mayer, but come on. I'm not taking Michael Mayer over Evan Engram right now. Like, this is insane. Like, this is one of the easiest buys you can make in fantasy. You can shore up your tight end position. The way he plays football, you have to assume, because he's not in the trenches, he's not blocking, he doesn't really get hurt. since he's been in Jacksonville. You had to assume that he's going to be pretty good over the next couple of years. So I'm in on Evan Engram. And if he hits home and touchdowns, like we're looking at a monster season for Evan Engram. But guys, I'm curious. I'll pass it over to Aidan. We were talking about this before we hopped in, but they're a prime take a receiver pick at 17. And I've heard some people like say they might even trade up. Say the Bears trade down at a 9 and Odunze's there or something, right? Or like how maybe they trade up to 7 for Tennessee and take a wide receiver. Would you be super out on Engram as like league winning upside if they take a rookie wide receiver? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I really like his role in that offense. To your point, 2 seasons in Jacksonville now, he's been tight end 5 and tight end 2, almost 250 targets, nearly 200 catches. To your point, I think he's due for some positive touchdown regression. Only 4. Each of those seasons where he's averaging 80, 90 catches. That's
Insane.
crazy. I think, like, to your point, like tight ends bank on that. So I think there's more meat on that bone. But your point around the wide receivers, I think the person that is like in the biggest danger would be Gabe Davis. Christian Kirk is Christian Kirk. He's not going anywhere in that offense. That is, a very friendly target for Trevor Lawrence, just consistently open. Sure, missed a couple of games last year, but actually pretty dependable throughout his career in terms of, showing up on a week-to-week basis. So I wouldn't really be all that concerned. I think, Gabe Davis would be the one that takes the biggest dip. It's not like Evan Ingram's like this like huge A-dot guy too. Like it's like 5 yards. It's not like he's, stretching the field like the potential Z wide receiver would do, or X, depending on whatever one you want to call Christian Kirk. I think Gabe Davis would be the biggest, negative benefactor there. So, no, I've got no concerns. That's why a tight end 13 for that is,
it's pretty cheap.
Low, and granted, like we just got like a huge influx of young tight ends over the last 2-3 years. Like I get it, but he's only 29 years old, man. It's not like this is a guy that looks like he's slowing down. He's kind of getting better. He's kind of like him and Njoku are just like kind of getting better as they get to 30.
They're entering into that phase where it's like you've got someone like George Kittle, who's the name brand, who's 29. He's slipping. He's the number 3rd or 4th option. Hey Siri, he's the number 3rd or 4th option in his offense sometimes. Evan Engram is in a better role, right? In a more consistent role. I'm not saying Evan Ingram's a better player than George Kittle or more impactful, but I mean, fantasy, his production's more bankable. Keegan, you've been the Evan Engram whisperer. How are we doing? Or is he still going to keep the momentum? Is it time to take the hat off for Evan Engram, or are we keeping it on?
I think you keep it on as long as like look, tight ends. I'm going to keep my Evan Engram hat. Like tight ends are still always going to be valuable. And like when you're assessing the tight end position, you talk about, well, he's going to have target competition here, but like, yeah, it's tight ends. Their reception value and like what we expected them is not what Evan Engram is getting last year. Like if he goes from 120 targets to 90 or 100, I'm still going to be pretty happy with that from the tight end position, and he's just such a good, like back to the athlete thing I was talking about Curtis Samuel. Evan Ingram's also just a really good athlete. He's great with the ball in his hands, like what he can do after the catch as well too. So I don't mind the low A-dot. And even if, like I said, they get target competition, first read stuff's still going to be there. Great rapport with Trevor Lawrence, good offensive environment that he's comfortable in. He knows really well. And he has downward, like there's a bubble of targets that I feel like I could lose from Evan Engram and still love his value as a tight end. And maybe it turns into more touchdowns and it's not as many receptions. Like I could see his target share maybe going down slightly, but his touchdowns going up. So I think I'm all in, especially because he's cheap. It's not easy to get a cheap tight end who's going to contribute to your team. You just got to pay up for someone or just hope that one of the 3 okay tight ends who roster are going to play well that week.
And he's got yak juice too. Like it was like, remember Zach Ertz would get 120 targets, but it was like catch and fall down. It's like Evan Engram gets the ball and he can do some damage. So it's like, this is a good player. And I think all 3 of these guys that we're buying are all really good players, right? I think James Conner's been an excellent player in his career. I think Curtis Samuel, when healthy, has really contributed to winning football games. He's been a good fantasy asset. And Evan Ingram's been a rock star for the past 2 seasons at the tight end position. So like, I feel like these guys, we led with league winning upside, right? And it's hard to capture league winning upside with vets, but we're talking about proven commodities that down the stretch could be really good and impactful roles in fantasy football on hopefully good offenses. And I think all 3 of these guys check those boxes. I think before we get out of here though, Aidan, if you had to prioritize any of these 3 guys, who would you be buying right now in fantasy, in Dynasty?
I think I'm going with Evan Ingram.
Okay.
I think in terms of like the price versus like tight end 13, like I'll be shocked if he's outside of, tight end 5, tight end 8 this year in terms of, your PPR scoring, especially in a tight end premium league. The dude is an absolute target and reception machine. So I really like Curtis Samuel. I really like James Conner too. But I think in terms of like where I perceive him finishing in terms of like ranking on, in PPR, this feels far too low for Evan Ingram. And to your point, yeah, you're probably getting him for a mid-second round pick. Maybe you flip him for an extra wide receiver that you have on your bench. I think the cost to get him for the kind of impact I see him having on your roster kind of feels like a no-brainer to me. So, no, good move on that one today.
Keegan, you had to pick any of these three guys. Who you buying?
I'm going with my buy, dude. I'm going with James Conner.
I think I'm going with Conner too. I feel like he's the exact type of running back that you want to get because maybe him or like Aaron Jones, right? Like one of these older guys and you're ready to compete. Like you don't have to pay up too much. And if it burns you, whatever. You took the swing. You didn't have to give up a first round pick and you're not holding on to these like delusions of grandeur that this guy's going to be your fucking running back for the next 3 years.
That's
right?
exactly how I would describe the running back class this year. That combination of words, delusions of grandeur. That's good.
Yeah, I'm in this position where I just traded away one of my seconds. I now have 2 seconds in this league we play in. It's like running back's a major need for me. And it's one of those things where it's like, do I really give up an elite potential wide receiver for a running back? Or do I like go just give up a 20-25 second for an aging running back who for a team is like, fuck it, I just need assets. I'll just get off of them now. Like,
I think it's a good trade too. Like all of these two like are helping people get off of an aging player too. Like it's kind of a win-win situation for each one of these scenarios. Like I doubt the Curtis Samuel owner wants to hold on to him because he's probably not in a good position in the league. And Evan Ingram, same way. And James Conner, especially. Like people want to age off running backs so bad. Like they feel like they're all Leonardo DiCaprio when it comes to the dynasty community. They're just like,
you just don't want to get caught holding it. You don't want to get caught holding the bag.
Oh, you're so sexy. No.
You could hold a James Conner bag and also hold a dynasty trophy up at the same time.
Exactly, and then trade him again
You've
next
got
offseason.
Two hands. You've got 2 hands. It's possible.
One
man.
for my bag, one for my trophy.
One for my trophy. Hey James, how's it going? Yeah, you guys would know. And I will say this before we get out of here for anyone that's still listening. When I mentioned that James Conner has fucking taken me behind the woodshed, I cannot tell. It's been now 3 years in a row where a James Conner 30 bomb in the semis against in 3 different leagues. These two guys double James Connered me in 2020, 2022. And then our buddy Monroe took me behind the shed with James Conner in 2023. I've had 3 elite teams just get bounced because James Conner was like, time to go full CMC God mode on your head. It's just like goblin mode. It was just terrible. So James Conner
watching him pick up extra yards like in week 16, he's just like fighting for every yard in week 16. It's a sight to watch.
No, it's the oh fuck, none of the Cardinals receivers are open right now. I'm just gonna dump it down to James Conner for a 6-yard gain. And you look at me like James Conner had how many yards? He had how many receptions? Yeah, James Conner, hell of a player. He was honestly one of the best running backs in all of football last year when he played. It was really impressive. I'm not going to lie, but that's it for today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast. We appreciate you, everybody, for tuning in. We're going to start full blown draft mode starting next week. We did a quarterback episode. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I think it's still pretty relevant. Diving through the top 6 prospects. I think we even talked a little Spencer Rattler. So that's how you know we went deep into the weeds on the quarterback episode.
Yeah,
boys. Before we go, anything we got to say to the listeners at home?
Happy opening day to all who celebrate.
Baseball. That's fun. That's sick. Keegan. Keegan.
I got
what
nothing.
do you have to say to the listeners at home? Nothing?
I got nothing today.
Okay.
The mustache will be back.
Well, the mustache will be back. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time.